Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Gun, 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 we've been gone not long. Wonder if we'll ever get through the summer. Gun, 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 we've been gone so long. Unspun.
I don't know. Chilliwack, right? Chilliwack.
Yeah.
You went through Chilliwack. I went through Chilliwack to get to where you are right now, which is on a lovely lake somewhere cool and refreshing. Kamloops, outside Kamloops. Yes. Cool. Right? Looks beautiful.
Thank you very much. If you hear loons crying, then you'll understand why. This is my Jody Lake look. I'm not even prepared to do anything. If somebody's just listening, thank you. And if you're rushing to our YouTube channel to look at what I look like when I don't have any accoutrement, here it is.
The lovely curls. The lovely curls, as my mother would say.
They're all out.
And I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt, so it's all summery, right?
Thank you for doing that for me, George. I appreciate it. And you've been working your butt off on CKNW. I'm listening to you doing all the fill-in while I tapped out for 12 days. So.
I know, right? Thanks for leaving me.
I'll be back on Monday.
Yeah. I'm back on Monday. Well, I'm Jill next week, so I'm noon to 3 next week, and then I'm Mike for a couple of weeks, so 9 to noon. I think last week of July, first week of August. It's fun, yeah. It's a nice little gig. It's been a busy time.
We'll do the Unspun crossover each and every day. At the 10 to 3, you get Jody and George live on your radio on CKNW.
Yeah.
You know what? If I was on radio right now, I would be definitely talking about the hot subject of Jody Wilson-Rabauld's letter to her constituents at Vancouver.
This just in, yeah.
Well, what do you think?
I know. Well, I tweeted immediately when I saw that. So now what is it, run for mayor or leadership of the BC Liberals, which might be a bit of a stretch, but, I threw it out there because it's, it's wide open right now, anybody's game. And I think that if you want to upset the BC Liberals in a big way, and a person like Jody Wilson-Rabauld would definitely do that. And they need a centrist to win the next election. So she's definitely center, if not somewhat left of center. So, but I think mayor of Vancouver is where we're heading on that one, which is bad news for Kennedy.
Yeah, right. Can we just jump in first on the BC Liberals angle, because it does spark that conversation for the novice politico who thinks that the federal Liberal Party is the BC Liberal Party. It is not. It is very different. And to say, it would be a natural for Jody Wilson-Rabauld to go from federal Liberal to provincial BC Liberal leader, that would be, as you said, a massive leap. But in your tweet, which I found really fascinating because a lot of people sort of went, "Are you kidding me?" Bob Price, who is actually up here in Kamloops, Bob, who was like, I don't think so. And you're like, but there is some talk about needing to blow things up significantly in order to shift and really attract back people who had once perennially voted for BC Liberals and now are voting elsewhere, clearly for the BC NDP. So there's that to think about, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that.
It would be, and you'd have Ellis Ross versus Jody Wilson-Rabauld. That would be really interesting to have two First Nations running for the leadership of a party. I think it's unlikely, but it's I'm sure she's considering it because she was on CBC this morning being very, very vague, which says to me she knows what she's doing and she's going to run again. It's like, it's so
you don't tell it all at once. Curve communications, George, you would know. You hold it back, you tease it, and then you're like, but by the way, I will tell you when I'm ready, So if she is going to throw her very learned, prepared, clearly savvy hat into the municipal ring, as you said, where we've been sort of splintering over on the right-hand side with the John Coopers and the Ken Sims of the world and the Mark Marisons, all of a sudden you throw a Jody Wilson-Rabauld into the mix, and that has to have Kennedy Stewart thinking maybe my numbers would change.
Well, I think it's a for Mark Marison, it's a adios, buddy, you're out for sure. He would depart immediately because there is a crossover there as a federal Liberal himself. I would say that it would be a real challenge for Ken Sim too. But he's obviously pretty dedicated to running for whatever reason. For John, it could be good, it could be bad. It's hard to say because I would say that, Jody Wilson-Rabauld is currently the MP in Shaughnessy, which is a pretty strong area for the NPA.
Yeah.
And she did win it as an independent. Now, the question is, what would she do if she ran? Would she run as an independent, or would she move into that Vision Vancouver machine, which still exists and has started up again? There is stuff happening. And so I'm betting right now that she's being wooed over to the Vision Vancouver as their candidate, because they have the machinery in place, they have the process, they have the party, they have everything they need. There's enough people out there that still like Vision Vancouver.
Are there?
And yeah, sure. It's got a base. No other party except for the MPA has a base. Kennedy Stewart doesn't have a base. He's trying to position himself with one city a little bit, but one city is definitely further to the left. And Vancouver's a centrist city, and you got to win the center to win. And Jody Wilson-Rabauld definitely could attract that centrist vote, which would knock out Kennedy and knock out John. But it also could help, Kennedy. It's hard to know. It's definitely real complicated with those three people.
I'm just going to say on two fronts there, if Jody Wilson-Rabauld, and I don't know her personally, this is not an endorsement of any way, shape, or form, but in the interviews that I've conducted with her, I found her to be incredibly forthcoming and engaging. I think she's a very savvy individual, clearly well educated. I love the fact, obviously, that she's a woman. That's a good thing in my book, and that she is an Indigenous woman. I think that the time has come to truly address and acknowledge the old boys club that
yes.
Obviously, like it has. And that's not a slight against people.
I don't know what that club is. I was never a member of it. You
were a dude, but you say that all the time, like that there are things that you can't speak about because you are the example of who should shh right now.
Yeah.
But that makes you I think more relevant, because you do see that being mansplained to by somebody who thinks they know what it's like to walk a mile in your shoes, whether you're a woman. No. I can't pretend to know what it's like.
I have 3 sisters. I have 3 sisters. Believe me. If I get a say in, it's a miracle. It's the 3 strong women I grew up with. So, and a strong mom. So, but I think that what's interesting though, what you're saying though, what I think also with Jody Wilson-Rabauld, I think that boys club is actually the one wooing her, which is interesting. They're the ones, because they want a candidate that can win. They can't not putting their money and their energy behind NPA, given the current board structure. Ken Sim kind of has some of it, but he's a loser. I mean, not literally as a person, but he lost. So it's not good for you to have the one campaign you did where $1 million was put behind you and you lost. I saw he's done his own polling where it shows him as the potential second best candidate for at least polls, or they're called push polls. And I didn't see the questions, and no reporters talked about the questions, but I'm guessing they were leading questions. So I think that it's you look at Shauna Sylvester, got 35,000 votes. She ran as an independent, and she was an unknown for the most part. You have Jody Wilson-Rabauld, who's a known quantity, respected in a riding currently that has a lot of the people that have the money and the network that she needs to build.
And they already trust her. She's already built that currency with her constituents, right? Like that's big. That's why incumbents win, right? Like there is that piece to the Jody Wilson-Rabauld puzzle coming into the municipal piece that no one else really has. I mean, you could say that John Cooper has some currency in that he has been such a long time park board commissioner who has been very on brand and on mission, very clearly has gotten things done, and he's pushed back. We'll get into the park board in a second. Let's go back to the municipal politics, because there were some things in council I want to talk to you about. Just before
we get to that, though, I think though, what might happen is that Kennedy Stewart gets pushed out. I think there's a movement by the NDP provincially. They don't like this guy. They don't trust him. They don't like the way he's been acting, and so they're also looking for somebody that fits better the bill. That's why I think the Vision Vancouver, Jody Wilson-Rabauld, the machine, the NDP, the unions. All that will get behind her, as well as some of the business community, which was exactly what Vision had. They had the unions and the business community and the developers. Right. They have both sides funding them, and that makes it a very powerful machine. So it could end up being Jody Wilson-Rabauld versus John Cooper. John Stewart, that would be amazing.
You'll love that.
And I don't think he's gonna stay there to the bitter end, which of course then we'll end up with the exact same situation. We have a division on the right, which leads to Jody Wilson-Rabauld being the next mayor. So
wow, there's the prediction.
Yep.
Holy moly. What are we, June 8th?
We'll
June
see.
8th, 2021 for the October 15th, 2022 election, which I keep reiterating. People
You
keep
heard it here first.
You heard it here first, as George-Affleck makes the prediction if Jody Wilson-Rabauld were to run for mayor of Vancouver. The current mayor of Vancouver, I don't know, I'm on vacation, but I still, like, I'll check because I'm out of range most of the day. And then, well, I'm obsessed, but I also need to, I've learned my lesson that if I don't keep up on the news cycle, when I come back to work, I feel very left behind, and I don't like to have to cram for the exam that is tomorrow. So I'm keeping up on it, and I saw something, and I actually clicked on the live feed of council discussing, and we haven't even talked about this prior to, but discussing like the extending of the city lease for Fraser Academy, the school. And there I am, and I said, I'm just going to click on it because I wonder what this sounds like. And I clicked on it, and it was 15 minutes of, I have no idea what you're talking about. At some point, are we going to talk about whether or not that school for kids who, you know, literally struggle on the spectrum of various levels and are provided an education and stuff, that we're talking about whether or not the school gets to stay there because it's city lease land? Like, the people that are freaking out about city lease land, never mind the people that are freaking out on the land that they currently own and pay massive taxes on, can't get permits for to build what they wanted to build on it. Like, the permitting problem in City Hall, we talk about it almost weekly here on UnSpun. And George, you've tried in your years in council to move it along, and here we still are having this conversation where it's the motion, and then it's, what do they call it? It's they fix the motion, they add to it.
It's, well, the fact that there's so many policies on policies and policies. So there was and so the school thing was unanimous too. So what are they talking about? Just pass it and move on. Like, they all knew where the vote was going to go. Yeah. So, but there was a motion passed last night, not unanimously. I think Colleen Hardwick voted against it. There was a lot of backlash about this report that came from staff, which was basically to speed up the process of the backlog that we have.
Right.
And actually, this report, its impetus was from 2017 when I was there. We put together there was a staff report that came and that we approved to deal with this, and it's taken them this long to come back. But there's also been 2 council motions related to this, probably the same motion twice, God knows. And so the report clearly indicated that this report was done because of the 2017 decision. It's written right in the report, and these 2 councillor motions. And so, but then Kennedy Stewart, it passes, and Kennedy Stewart puts out, my idea just passed. It's like, I don't think it was your idea, actually. In fact, you watered down one of the motions, which I think was from Lisa Dominato.
It was Lisa Dominato.
She wanted a 30-day, fast track, just
let's
rubber
move
stamp.
it. Let's get rid of the backlog. Let's do this by the 3rd quarter of next year. By the 3rd quarter of next year, we're punting it all the way down the road. Come on.
It's true. And the weird thing is, though, and I always would say this to the new people when I would talk to them. I think you have all these policies on policies layered on policies, and hypocrisy, and this one usurps that one, and it's so confusing, and staff are lost and confused and not knowing, and if you're a person trying to build a laneway house or whatever, we saw Francis Bueller's 5-part series on the nightmare that is. The first thing this council should have done was clean up the mess and get rid of those redundant policies that were presented to us, as I have tweeted many times. That chart that came from Gil, the former city planner, the head of planning, and it showed you the layered problems. Okay, just hit those up. Instead, what this policy is another policy on top of a policy to deal with.
Added another layer.
It's another layer on top of all the other layers, but to basically empower staff roughly to approve stuff without council's approval. But it's not that. That's what it's being attacked for, but it's not specifically that. There is still a process, but it's basically just to fast track stuff. So we'll see if it works. You said it
before, George, and I want to jump in on this because I think it's really important in the spin of it all that you have truly brought the UnSpun to this and said, listen, there should be a fast track policy in place for what was already decided, that had public consultation, that went through council, went through all the proper channels, has become our municipal policy for permitting. If you meet those requirements, you get the box. The stamp of approval comes when you have hit car. Wait.
It's like street hockey.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm sitting on my patio. If you're not watching this and just listening to it, I'm sitting on a patio by a lake because I'm still, quote unquote, living that lake life on vacation. More on that, my arrival here last Wednesday in a second. But first, let's talk about the Vancouver Police Department angst associated with Mayor Kennedy Stewart, Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart, who no longer sits as the chair of the board for the VPD.
No, well, yeah, he's not the spokesperson for the board.
Spokesperson.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm just watching these tweets go by, and I think it's Tom Samankis who chimed in last night, who's, you know, saw a Vancouver is Awesome piece that basically is just like straight up slagging the VPD and saying, you know, it just seemed very lopsided in how it was reported upon in that particular op-ed piece. So opinions, I mean, you're entitled to your opinions. But I saw Tom's response to that is like the frustration piece. Like I can only imagine how divisive this is at a time where there's a gang war and an opioid crisis and the emergency services responses problem that we're having in BC at large, but Vancouver certainly at the center of this. Those basic functions of our municipal emergency response and law enforcement is so critical that the mayor would put out something that is like, here's my idea on permits. That was the press release we got in the last week.
Well, and he's
heat dome health emergency.
Well, let's get into the fires. I mean, he's clearly put his you know, he and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago that this is his thing. He's going to be anti-police and John's pro-police. That's basically, but he's trying to take credit. This is such a vision move too, though. Like Gregor used to do is take credit for stuff that he didn't do, and it's not uncommon in politics. It's pretty common that politicians take credit when they need to so they can say, especially if it meets their criteria. But it's challenging. You've got a council with a budget coming up in, you know, first iteration of budget coming soon. That police, they're going to want more money again. They're going to, you know, the mayor said he wants the budget to be less than 5%. Finance staff said that's probably not possible. We're going to have to find cuts, but finance staff always say that. So, you know, but then there's a question, and they pointed in a recent report that it's because of this council's desire to build housing and put housing as a top priority, that's sucking all the cash away on anything else you do in the city. And so if you want to, you know, be a politician that's different, you got to take the risk and say, no more housing. We can't do it. It's not our job. Other municipalities have not done the kind of stuff we've done in housing. It's something I always said, it's not our role. It's taking too much of our taxpayer dollars. And finance staff officially are saying that now. But you have an entire council, left, right, the current people that sit there are all, you know, about housing in some form or other. That's all they ever talk about for the most part. And yet so this latest motion was about speeding up the process. Okay, fine. But you know, that's the amount of funding and cash going into housing in the city is into the hundreds of millions. And it's putting us into bankruptcy zone, as the mayor would say. I mean, we're literally $100 million in the hole this year, and we'll be another 100 million next year. That we don't have, that we have to find, that we have to tax basically people. And
there's only one bank. It's the bank of you and me.
Yeah.
It's a bullshit cup of coffee, George.
Yeah. $2 here, $2 there.
A lot of coffee.
It's a lot of coffee. So, but you know, the mayor, I think that one of the things, you know, the good news is we can drink in 22 parks now. So wait.
Did that just happen?
Yeah, I think last night the park board approved for the summer.
So the state of emergency is now over, and we're allowed to have people inside now. We're allowed to actually have a dinner party now if you're vaccinated, if you're fully immunized. Yeah. Now we can go to the party.
But only 22.
We can go to the park and have dinner with a glass of wine there.
Only 22 of them, though, Jody. So, and you have to sit on grass that's this long, that's ready to be torched and ready to catch fire.
You want to tell
that hasn't been, or under a tree that hasn't been watered. It's like
that I really want to talk about, because that stressed me out. I love my trees. I'm very garden forward. I walk in the trees every single day. Look at my trees.
Pretty important. Yeah.
But that picture, where was that picture from that you posted on your Twitter? By the way, everybody should be following George_Affleck on Twitter. Pardon my dogs, they're barking at me now inside because I'm getting all riled. But I saw that move on your Twitter, and you're like, hello, where are the bags that were on these trees
I
last
know
year?
they were there last year. This was on Pacific Boulevard. There's in downtown, like in Yaletown, and there's this middle section of the street that has, it's supposed to be a train going down there, actually, light rail in the future. But for the time being, they put trees along there, and so it's city land. There's no quite often, like for where I live, we water the trees that are actually city-owned trees. We put the bags on them.
Yeah.
We make sure those trees are taken care of.
I had one planted in front of my house with no notice, and it just had a tag on it that said, "This is now your responsibility." I was like, fine.
Yeah. And so, ironically, the city doesn't see the same responsibility for themselves, whether it be a park board or city, to water these trees that they are 100% responsible for. So I tweeted this, and a lot of pickup on that one. And I saw the truck, about 2 days later, there was a big truck pouring water into them and sweeping the dead leaves away, so we'd never know what happened. So but this is an issue around the city. We plant thousands and thousands of trees, and yet we don't take care of them. They die. It's ridiculous. I mean, don't plant them if you're not going to take care of them. Anyways, but it's also an indication of how the park board's upside down on what they're supposed to be doing. There's rules and responsibilities. A motion to allow drinking in 22 parks when we know we're drinking in every single park right now and have been for over a year.
It's just in. And the reason you don't notice is because nobody's causing a problem. Exactly. Stop policing the people playing hacky sack at Kits Beach. Stop it. Stop it.
Oh God, yeah, those little four-wheel things.
Oh my God.
And then you've got them putting the cones in Stanley Park, hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent on that, when you should be putting bags around trees and putting water in it.
But you got clapped back there, didn't you? We don't use those bags there, George.
By your buddy Dave Demare.
He was much nicer to me than he was to me, by the way. I can't believe the response that I got from that. He's like,
he blocked you, right? He blocked you, right?
Blocked me, yeah.
What did you say? That made him block you?
It was on his what he calls his personal Instagram, which, by the way, is public. That's how I came across it. And there was a picture of him laying in the long dried grass in a park, because we want meadows instead of parks in parks. I don't understand meadows. But anyway, but he was like, "This is in my happy place," kind of thing. And he posted that on the weekend when it was 40 degrees in Vancouver. And it's like, you're in your happy place, and there are no lifeguards at English Bay, and E. coli in the water, and your picture is of you lying in long grass at Queen Elizabeth Park. Like, what? Your priorities are messed up. And he was like, "What's wrong with you? How dare you?" It was kind of misogynistic. He was very dismissive. He basically called me a novice. Like, why don't you go through proper channels if you want an interview, like other reporters? Because that's what reporters do. And I saved all of it because I was like, this is weird. And then, Instagram just went through the process of, can no longer comment, or your comment's been deleted, and now you've been blocked. And I was just like watching this all happen, going, this is an elected official who is now attacking me, and then attacked me on Twitter on the same stuff, because he doesn't like to be called out. And I went through all of his bios on the page, because I remember, this is the most frustrating thing for me, George. I voted for him based on his bios, right? So, and I said, this as making parks into meadows, as he has said on his Instagram, is his lifelong mission. That was not in his bio. If that had been in his bio, I would not have voted for him. So, and he's like, "It is clearly in my," and I was like, okay, I'm not fighting with this person anymore. Clearly, he does not want to have a rational conversation about what it means to have city parks in a place where people don't have outdoor space. They don't have patios, never mind yards. Think of the people living in the towers. You've got that collective little courtyard. That's great. You can't go and play Frisbee with your kids in a park that's made for meadows.
And I think I talked about my kids sort of half sports day at David Lamb Park there. Usually there's this little hill, and it was just covered in grass. And downtown, it's probably needles and dog piss and God knows what in there. I don't want to sit in that. Usually it's a nice little hill to sit on that we in the shade. There's nice little trees there, and you can look at the water. Nope, it's all grass. It's a 1.5 feet long. I didn't see any bees, so I didn't see any pollination.
Did you see that? Somebody sent me a picture of Banff, and how they utilize those medians, like you were talking about, where ultimately there'll be a train going through. I fully support like boulevards and medians and places and spaces where people would never gather and sit anyway. Let's make those into wildflowers. Let's put bee pollinators,
but do it properly, not just
right. But the infrastructure, if we're going to $4.3 million on a playground and a whatever, and then not mow the lawn so people won't go there. Like,
It's
just, it makes me crazy. Clearly it makes me crazy.
You know, you admitting who you voted for. Here's a pro tip for those people out there in the next election. You don't have to vote for every single person. You know, if there's 9 people running or 5 people running, the most powerful thing you can do is to vote for less people than are running. You know, if you vote for one person, you give every person a vote. You pull them up. It's not a ranked ballot, right? It's a first past the post. So every vote
Rookie
a person
move,
gets,
man. Rookie move, George.
So just vote for the people you want to vote for, and you don't have to vote for 10 councillors if you don't want to.
This is the takeaway of takeaways right here, right now, George, because only 30% of people vote in a municipal election. Like, it's some crazy number, like 34% of people actually vote. I feel it's my responsibility to vote. I did not know that I could put an incomplete ballot. Yes. I literally did study, and there were.
You can't do more, but you can do less.
Oh my God, I'm so doing less. I am, oh my God.
Unless there's 10 great people or 7 great
sure.
people or whatever. But, you know, I think
I can pick 2 that I would vote for next time on Park Board.
Yeah.
2. And I'm officially, and I'm saying it here, and I would say it loudly, but I'm offended by the response I received from that elected official. I think it is unbecoming.
Well, if you can't handle that kind of stuff, you shouldn't be in office. It's part of everything's public. Everything's public. You know,
the response I received from him versus what I put out there was way out of line. I was not out of line, and he made it appear that I was. And the misogyny, it's steeped in misogyny. Anyway, whatever. Let's talk about something else. I want to talk about, and thank you. By the way, further to the grass point, because he wanted to argue that grass collects dew. The fire department disagrees, and the Vancouver Fire Rescue have all put out statements saying, cut your grass, because dry grass is fuel. So I'll leave it at that. He tried to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. And you don't know what you're talking about either, because those bags don't belong on those trees. Except for,
I just want them water. I don't know what they do.
Water the damn trees.
I'm not claiming to be an expert. Just water the goddamn trees.
I will go back to municipal for 1 second. I did love the press release I saw just before leaving on vacation that said there is a greater investment in cleaning the city of Vancouver, that there is going to be
bigger garbage cans and
right. And I think that is a direct result of you and I bitching about it here for 130 episodes. I really do.
I do. When I started 10 years ago as a politician.
No, that doesn't count.
It's just when we were doing
it. Let's talk about Premier John Horgan and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Coquitlam today. Talking about wildfires for sure, but they were in Coquitlam, so I guess they must have done a flyover.
Yeah, I think they did a flyover. I mean, it's obviously election time, and the Prime Minister's out there making big announcements that probably will never happen. I think what's interesting and what we're seeing, you know, in what happened last week in Lillooet, you know, in Lytton, was terrible and horrible. And Lillooet's heading to and you know, we're sort of what we're seeing now though is a lot of criticism on the fact that feds and province were asleep and cities, frankly, have been asleep at the wheel on this issue of fire. We knew this heat was coming. We know it's been tinder dry for most of the spring. Since April, there was a bit of wet in May, but it's basically been pretty dry. We didn't have a ton of snow. So it's kind of predictable that we would be having a fire season this year. And there didn't seem to be any they're being criticized for not being prepped. And I think what happened was that heat wave happened in the same week as the announcement about, you know, going into phase 3 or step 3. And I think they were so excited.
Out of a state of emergency, and everybody's like, yay!
And so they're kind of like, they were a bit giddy about that, and they weren't paying attention to the other big issue that was coming, which was fire season, which is fairly predictable when it starts up. And we knew for 10 days that heat wave was coming. And so we had a heat wave, which killed many people, like 4 to 5 times more people died that week. We'll find out more about that down the road. And then we had the fire and multiple fires across the province. And I think it's disappointing that that more wasn't done quickly at the time. And I think that's the province and the federal government are taking criticism for this, but they're deflecting on to announcements about universal childcare, for example. Oh, it's coming, Jody. It's coming. We're getting it everywhere.
Thanks. They've been talking about it since Brady was in utero, and he's 13 and no longer needs childcare. So thanks. but it'll help the next generation. I
He's
guess.
in the background going, "Mom, don't talk about BB and me."
There's also the you could call it an indicator that a federal election is coming, right? In the appointment of a significant appointment of a new governor general.
Yes, they had to do that. If without a governor general, you can't ask to dissolve the government. So that was, and I think he was enjoying not having a governor general for as long as he possibly could. But in order to dissolve government, he needs permission by the governor general. So we have a new governor general, Mary Simon, Indigenous from northern Quebec.
Yeah,
I thought it was interesting, the whole she doesn't speak French argument, but she is bilingual. In fact, she's trilingual, I think.
And she did her acceptance in her native language, in her native tongue, as well as in English. And I watched her interview from, I think, 2012 with George Stroumboulopoulos on his show back on CBC. Wow. If you have an opportunity, Google that, watch that interview, how she opens there. It just gives me goosebumps even thinking about it. I can't do it justice to share it here, but just Google Mary Simon, George Stroumboulopoulos, or Strombo, and it's
easier to spell.
Yeah. And when it comes to wildfires, please read my column in the Orca this week, as I am on vacation.
You literally drove through and saw some stuff there that you talk about. It's quite, I think it's emotional too when you actually see these fires. And when I was on last week as a host, I was talking to people who are out there, and those stories of seeing fire and what happened. It was an emotional week, and your column touches on that for sure.
And right after I hit send on the column to submit it to McLean Kay, our editor-in-chief, for publication yesterday, literally within hours, Global News there is a new fire 2 kilometers south of the lake that I am on, and my phone lit up. People are like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And we're like, "We're good." We're looking around. And, sure enough, the community here was so great. I learned to have a go bag. I learned, this place has only one way in and out. And how does that look? What is your plan B if it comes at you in a way that you can't get out? Starting to think about things in a different way. And it makes me come all the way back around to the argument over whether or not grass is fuel. In the reality we are in now, everything is fuel. Everybody needs to protect and fireproof their space, their place, and wherever they go. We need to be mindful of that. And particularly, please, to those who enjoy the great outdoors, do not have fires at the beach. Do not break the law by having a fire during a time of ban. This is an extreme fire risk, and the last thing we need is more human-caused fires. So that's my plea to you, having been through what I've been through this week. Read my column at theorca.ca. Give me a follow at Jody Vance on Twitter. Of course, george_affleck on Twitter. Always a great follow as well. And this went by far too fast. Next week, I'll be all official and back home and all proper for you, George. Thanks for hanging out with me.
All right, bye. Enjoy your last few days.